Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into Intel. And wow, you weren't messing around with the source material. We've got SEC filings, we've got industry reports, even some chatter from Reddit. Someone's been doing their homework.
It's a fascinating time to be looking at Intel, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, this is the company that was like synonymous with PCs.
Yeah.
Right. And now they're trying to, well, reinvent themselves in a way.
Trying to write their next chapter, absolutely. And they're not being subtle about it either.
No kidding. I mean, even in their 2018 10K, they come right out and say it. Corporate transformation. But, like, what does that even mean in practical terms? That's what we're here to unpack.
It all comes back to data. Data. Think about it. Everything we do generates data now. Streaming, social media, online shopping, it's an explosion of information. And all that data has to be processed, analyzed, stored. It's a whole ecosystem. And Intel, they want to be the ones running that ecosystem. It's not just about PCs anymore.
So they're going after that whole data center world, cloud computing, AI, all that.
Exactly. And this isn't just talk. They're putting their money where their mouth is. We're seeing it in their financials, the acquisitions they're making, everything.
Well, speaking of financials, you know our listener has their 10Ks flagged. Full disclosure, I saw those and thought, okay, here's where the real deep dive begins. But you promised me we'd make this fun.
Oh, absolutely. We're not going to get lost in the weeds. What we're looking for here is the story those numbers tell.
The story of how much money they're actually making from this whole data-centric business, right?
Yeah. Because anyone can talk a big game, but are they actually delivering? Are they growing fast enough to compete in this new world?
Because the data world is a fast-moving one. It's not like the old days of like, okay, we'll just release a new processor every couple of years and call it good. The competition is fierce.
That's an understatement. And speaking of competition, there were a couple of names you specifically wanted to talk about, SMD and Nvidia.
Oh, yeah, those are big ones. Okay, so for our listener who maybe hasn't memorized the entire tech landscape, can you give us the quick rundown? Why are AMD and Nvidia so important in the Intel story?
Well, if Intel wants to be the king of the data center, AMD is the one trying to steal their crown. They're going head-to-head on processors, trying to offer more power, better efficiency, the whole 9 yards.
It's like a classic rivalry, right? They've been going at it for years.
Oh, for decades. And then you have Nvidia, who's dominating a whole other arena, GPUs.
GPUs, right. Those are the things that are essential for AI, machine learning, all that stuff everyone keeps saying is the future.
Exactly. Nvidia's found a really powerful niche in a market that's just exploding.
Yeah.
So Intel is basically fighting a war on two fronts, trying to hold off AMD in their traditional territory while figuring out how to catch up with Nvidia in this whole new area.
So Intel's talking a big game about transforming, but they've got some serious challengers snapping at their heels. What does that mean for their bottom line? What does it mean for their future? That's what we need to find out.
That's what we're here to uncover. And to do that, we have to dig a little deeper into these financials, because one thing that jumped out at me is the sheer amount of money Intel is investing. We're talking billions of dollars here, upgrading their existing factories, building entirely new ones. They're going all in on this.
So is that a sign of confidence or is it a desperate gamble? I guess that's the million-dollar question, right?
It's a great question.
That too.
And to answer it, we have to look at both sides of the coin, the potential rewards and the very real risks.
Because, as they say, higher risk, higher potential reward, but also higher potential for things to go, well, not as planned.
Exactly. And nobody knows that better than Intel themselves, which is why I love that you flagged this section in their filings, the risk factors.
Ah, yes, the risk factors section, the part of every financial statement that's just a little bit terrifying.
It's like the warning label on a roller coaster, right? Might make you a little queasy, but you kind of need to know what you're getting into.
Okay, so hit me with it. What are some of the risks Intel is worried about?
Well, obviously we have the competition we just talked about. But on top of that, they're also operating in a global landscape that is incredibly unpredictable right now. Remember how we were saying data-rich markets? Well, those markets are everywhere, which means Intel is exposed to geopolitical risks, trade wars, the whole shebang.
Right, because if there's one thing we've learned in the last few years, it's that global events can really throw a wrench in things.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And it's not just about politics and economics either. Even something like climate change is a factor. Droughts can impact semiconductor production. Extreme weather events can disrupt supply chains. It's all connected.
Wow. So it's not just about building the best chip anymore. It's about navigating this whole web of global complexity. I bet that keeps Intel executives up at night.
You know what else probably keeps them up at night?
What's that?
Talent. Getting it. keeping it.
Ah, right. And that's where this whole restricted stock unit grant agreement comes in. Okay, full disclosure. When I saw this in the stack of documents you sent me, I will admit I felt a little in over my head. It seemed pretty heavy on the legal jargon.
We'll break it down, don't worry. Basically, it boils down to this. Intel needs the best and brightest minds to pull this off. They're not just building chips. They're trying to build the future. And to do that, they need to attract, and just as importantly, hold on to, some seriously talented people. Engineers, designers, thinkers.
So these restricted stock units are like golden handcuffs, a way to give people a financial incentive to stick around.
That's one way to look at it. It's a way to compete in the war for talent, as they call it. Tech companies are always trying to poach each other's employees, so they offer these big compensation packages to sweeten the deal.
So Intel's trying to stay competitive, make it worth people's while to buy into this whole transformation.
Exactly. And it's not just about the money either. These kinds of agreements also tap into something a little more, well, intangible. It's about giving people a sense of ownership, of shared purpose.
So it's not just come work for us and get rich, it's come be a part of something bigger.
Right. And that actually ties in nicely with some of that social media chatter you flagged, that Reddit thread.
Oh, yeah. That one was fascinating because you had some people who were super skeptical, like Intel turning themselves around. No way. But then you had others who were like, this is huge. This is their chance to get back on top, be the leaders again.
And that, I think, is what makes this whole deep dive so compelling. We're looking at a company at a crossroads, a company with this legacy of success, but facing these unprecedented challenges.
It's a real turning point for them. And the best part is we have a front row seat.
And not just a front row seat. We have all this information, all these different perspectives to help us understand not just what's happening, but why it matters.
And why should our listener care about all this? I mean, it's one thing to be interested in tech, but why should they care about the inner workings of Intel?
That's such a great question, and it's one we're going to keep unpacking as we go even deeper. Because the truth is, even if they don't realize it, Intel's story is deeply intertwined with all our lives. You know, it's funny, we talk about financials and it sounds kind of dry, but when you actually dig into these reports, you can really see the story unfold.
Oh, totally. It's like they're putting their money where their mouth is. Right. We were just talking about those massive investments, upgrading factories, building new ones. Those are billion-dollar decisions.
Exactly. That's not chump change. It shows a real commitment to this new direction. But of course, that doesn't mean it's a guaranteed win.
Right, because remember those risk factors we talked about? They literally have to list out everything that could go wrong. It's like a what could possibly go wrong brainstorming session, but, you know, with lawyers.
And it's not just a formality either. These are real concerns, real challenges they have to address. Like take their rivalry with AMD, for instance. That's not going away anytime soon, especially in the data center market. And as we've said, that market is key for Intel's future.
Right, because AMD isn't some small fry trying to get a piece of the pie. They're a major player. They could really throw a wrench in Intel's plans if they're not careful. I'm remembering some of those Reddit comments now. Some people were saying AMD is giving them a run for their money on performance and even price.
They've become a real force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. And then you've got Nvidia, who's playing a whole different game altogether.
Right. GPUs, not CPUs.
Exactly. While AMD is going head-to-head with Intel on processors, Nvidia is dominating that GPU market, which is crucial for all these specialized applications like AI and machine learning.
So it's like a two-pronged attack on Intel's ambitions. They're trying to hold off AMD in their traditional territory while figuring out how to compete with Nvidia in this whole new world of GPUs. It's a lot.
It is. And we haven't even talked about all the external factors they have to navigate. We mentioned those data-rich markets being global. Well, that means they're exposed to a whole other level of complexity, trade wars, political instability, even things like climate change.
Yeah, because if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that the world can change really fast.
No kidding. And for a company like Intel, with global supply chains, manufacturing in different parts of the world, they have to be able to adapt, to manage risk in a way that maybe they didn't have to before.
It's not just about building the best chip anymore. It's about, like, understanding geopolitics and supply chain management and even the weather. That's intense.
It really is. And you know what else is a huge factor and something we touched on earlier?
What's that?
Talent. Finding it and keeping it. That's a major challenge for any tech company right now, but especially one trying to reinvent itself like Intel.
Right, because you can have the biggest dreams, the most innovative ideas, But without the right people to actually execute those ideas, it's all just talk.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that restricted stock unit grant agreement. I know it sounded a little intimidating when we first mentioned it.
Oh, a little bit. Legal documents are not exactly my idea of light reading.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
But it's actually a fascinating document when you really dig into it because it gives us a glimpse into how Intel is trying to attract and keep top talent.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are these restricted stock units, and what do they actually mean for the average Intel employee or someone thinking about working there?
So basically, it's a way for Intel to offer employees a piece of the pie, so to speak. They're giving them a stake in the company's future success. These units are like a promise of future shares in the company, which they'll get over time.
Okay, so like a long-term incentive.
Exactly. It encourages them to think long-term, to tie their own success to the company's success. And that can be a powerful motivator, especially in the tech world, where people tend to move around a lot.
Right, it's not like the old days of working for the same company for 30 years.
Exactly. Job hopping is common, so companies like Intel are always looking for ways to keep their best people from jumping ship. And offering them a piece of the pie, that's one way to do it.
And it's not just about the money either, right? There's something to be said for feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, like you're building the future.
Absolutely. And, this actually ties in with some of that social media chatter we were discussing earlier. Remember that Reddit thread? How some people were really excited about Intel's potential?
Oh, yeah, like they saw it as a chance to be on the ground floor of something big.
Exactly. And for some people, that kind of opportunity, that sense of purpose, that's just as motivating as a big paycheck, maybe even more so.
It's interesting how all these things are connected, right? Like we started with these dry financial statements, but we ended up talking about human motivation and what makes people tick.
It's all part of the story. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking at numbers on a page. We're trying to understand the human story behind those numbers.
And that human story includes our listener, because they're not just passive observers in all this. What Intel does, how they navigate these challenges, it has an impact on all of us.
Absolutely. Whether it's the technology we use every day, the jobs these companies create, or even just the overall health of the economy, we're all stakeholders in this in some way.
It's wild to think it's all connected, right? Like Intel's story is about way more than just one company.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like holding a magnifying glass up to the entire tech industry, the global market, even our daily lives in a way.
Totally. But, something you said earlier keeps coming back to me. Are they moving fast enough? Like they're making these huge changes, huge investments, but is it enough to actually stay ahead in this game?
Ah, the million-dollar question. And you know what?
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. Intel's got this incredible history, right? They've been innovating for decades. They're a global powerhouse.
Yeah.
And they're clearly putting their money where their mouth is, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But that doesn't guarantee anything. This industry, it doesn't wait for anyone.
It's like they're trying to turn a battleship, right? Like it takes time and there are so many moving pieces. You've got AMD right there breathing down their necks. And then you've got Nvidia coming in from a completely different direction, just owning that whole GPU space, which is only becoming more important as AI and all that stuff takes off.
And then you layer on top of that all the stuff we were talking about before, right?
Yeah.
The global supply chains, the geopolitical uncertainty, even climate change. These are huge, unpredictable forces that Intel has to somehow navigate.
It's a lot. So where does that leave our listener? They've been on this whole journey with us, digging through these financials, analyzing the competition, even getting into the weeds of like stock options and talent acquisition. What's the takeaway?
That's where you come in, right? You're the one who brought us this incredible collection of sources. You're clearly not just a passive observer here. You're digging deep, trying to make sense of it all.
Because anyone can read a headline, right? But you went to the trouble of gathering all this information. That tells me you're looking for those, like, aha moments, the insights that most people miss.
And what are those insights for you? What's jumped out at you as you've gone through all this material? Is Intel's vision compelling? Do their investments make sense? Are they addressing the risks in a way that gives you confidence?
Because we can offer our perspectives, but ultimately you're the one who's been living with this information, thinking about it, connecting the dots.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right? It's not about us giving you the answers. It's about giving you the tools, the information, the different perspectives, so that you can form your own conclusions.
It's about empowering you to be an informed citizen, a savvy consumer, maybe even a better investor. Who knows?
The possibilities are endless. And as we wrap up, I keep thinking about that idea of Intel being at a crossroads. Their story is still being written. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, our listener will be part of writing the next chapter.
Because the future of technology, it's
Yeah.
not just something that happens to us, it's something we all have a hand in shaping. And the more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to make the choices that create the future we want to see.